What's up, everybody? I came across a video a few months ago by the streamer named Destiny, where he talks about his moral system. I haven't watched it yet, but I'm going to now, and we're going to discuss his ideas about what is morality. We already talked about him where we critiqued him about his defense of his use of the N-word. It was in that he didn't have the guts or the self-esteem to really defend his position. But without further ado, here it is. Questioning My Moral System and Political Position by Destiny. It says episode 1, so I think he made a second video on such. I'm not sure. We'll find out. This is an hour long, so it might take me a few days to get through it because I want to do it right. But here we go.
I don't think you should ever kill a human being ever. Well, except in that case. Okay, well, wait, hold on. Clearly you don't believe that, then. There's something else you believe. Let's get to the root of that. Let's find out what you actually believe, right? My general belief is, I feel like if you have a certain political position, I feel like it should be justified. What I mean is, I feel like we should have logically coherent and consistent ways by which we take questions, apply some rigorous moral standard to them, and then generate answers that will be consistent with the answers that we give to any other question. So there's two parts to this. One, if something is not consistent, it is meaningless. Okay? What I mean is that in any given system, you have rules for that system. If you decide that you can break some rules, then you could break any rule, because it doesn't make sense to have a system where some rules can be broken. That means that you're actually using another system, right? Does that make sense? Like, if you're saying, like, okay, I don't think that you should ever kill a human being ever. Well, except in that case. Okay, well, wait, hold on. Clearly you don't believe that, then. There's something else you believe. Let's get to the root of that. Let's find out what you actually believe, right? So it's important to have a system where all the rules they make sense. I'm sorry, when I say they make sense, where all the rules are consistent, so you always follow them. They're, like, you have to do this, otherwise it falls apart. And then you should be consistent throughout the entire rule set. If you believe that you can't do something, that should be consistent throughout all of it, whatever, blah, 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 with reasonable additions, changes. You need to be consistent. It needs to be logically coherent. When I try very hard to do this, even though I don't know if anybody believes this. When I say the word logical or rational, what I mean by that is like premise, conclusion. So if I say you have a logically coherent argument, I might say something like, you should never kill somebody unless you're threatened. Joe represented a threat to Susan. Therefore, Susan can kill Joe. Something like that, right? Like it should follow like either a syllogism or some like reasonable pattern of like, oh, well, if I believe these three things, then this conclusion logically follows. Any moral system you have should be logically coherent. Okay, it makes sense. Line all the statements up, and it should be consistent. You like have the same set of rules you apply everything to. Okay, ideally,
he's got that. He's got that on point. It should be logically coherent and consistent. A lot of people don't believe that there is objective morality, that it even exists. And in this video, he says that he doesn't believe that there's such a thing. So I don't know why he bothered making the video in the first place. Why have a discussion about how there isn't objective, his objective moral system if there's no objective morality? It doesn't make any sense. But here we go.
If I were asked, so I feel like when people are asked a question, how do you feel about this thing? There's usually two things that people's minds go to. One is, do I have a visceral reaction to it? Right? So if I say, how do you feel about eating shit? Oh, fuck. I have a sense. I've got a sense that.
What happened? And we've run into an issue.
Like immediately says this is bad, is the first thing people appeal to. And then the second thing people appeal to is, what is the correct answer that I'm supposed to give given the groups that I belong to? I think that that's the second answer you give. When people run out of those two things, most people don't actually have a rigorous process by which they can evaluate whether something is good or bad.
Those two responses would be incorrect ways of thinking. They'd be incorrect responses, because to have a visceral reaction without thinking anything through, I'm not saying you have to think it through the minute you're asked a question, but when there is a question and you have the time to think it through. And answering based on what group you belong to or what you think somebody wants to hear is something that's common, and it is also wrong.
Bad, or whether they do or don't like something. I think that that's like that's something that I strongly believe in. Maybe people will disagree with that, but yeah. So for instance, if I say, how do you feel about socialized healthcare? Well, we don't have an initial like sense response to that. Okay, well, what groups do I belong to? Okay, I'm liberal, I'm blah blah blah. Oh, okay, cool. I like universal healthcare, right? That's generally it. Now they might think they know some justifications, but really what they're doing is they're just going to repeat what they heard from the group, knowing that they have to support it. Yeah, because it's the group or whatever. What I want is I want to have some internal system that I've designed that allows me to take moral questions and generate moral answers. Okay? Like, that's important to me. It's very important to me. It's one of the most important things to me. So how do we do this, okay? The very first question that we have to start off at, we have to go all the way back, okay, is we have to ask, what is goodness? What do we consider to be the good? In my actual opinion, this question is unanswerable. This is a question that the answer to this question is going to draw on something external of like human knowledge. Good is an ill-defined concept. I don't believe that there is an actual answer, blah, 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 blah. So I
See, this is where it becomes odd that he's even having the discussion, because he doesn't believe that you can derive an ought from an is. He doesn't believe that you can say this is good based on, or what I choose to do is good based on what is the case. I'm 100% positive that Sam Harris attempted to derive an ought from an is. Destiny's not even going to try, even though it relies on that answer, on that being possible. An objective morality that isn't based on mysticism relies on that.
have like my own little answer for goodness, basically. Okay, and I'll walk you through this a little bit. Okay, so since I don't believe that there is like an objective good, objective, truthful, good, moral, whatever. I'm not religious. I don't believe in any sort of like moral realism or objective moral truth, because I don't think that we have ways to feel or see morality. I don't think we can sense it or detect it or argue about it.
But you can, though. You can. It is derived from our nature as human beings, and it comes from the fundamental question: do you want to live or do you want to die? And if you decide that life is what you want, then anything that contributes to life, your life, is goodness. What I'm not going to get into why I think that choosing death is immoral. I think it is because I'm not going to get into super detail, but I think it is because I think that it's the end of values. You can't value dying. It's the end of values. You know what I mean?
Basically, what I do is I say that there are things that I have that I want to fulfill in my life that make me happy. Those things are, to me, those things are good. So I basically have some like internal happiness. I try to maximize and fulfill my own internal happiness. Well,
So in other words, he gets it from nothing.
I'll just call this IH. You guys have to remember what this shit stands for. If this is like what I'm trying to maximize, right? My goal is to live a life where I can satisfy this like internal happiness as much as humanly possible. Now, typically, okay, because I'm not a god, all right, I'm not like capable of doing most things on my own. I can't hunt on my own. I can't create clothing. I can't build houses. There's a lot in my life that makes me happy that I need that I can't provide for myself. What I need to do is I need to get this from other people as well, right? As a side note, I assume that everybody else functions off of this very same moral principle. Now, people are going to argue that they don't, but I think they do. What I call internal happiness, I think they call religion or some other weird bullshit or deontology. I don't care. I think that most people try to satisfy some internal preferences they have. So what I realize is I can't satisfy these on my own, so I have to satisfy these by way of interacting with other people. In order for them to be motivated to satisfy my internal happiness, I have to do something that increases their happiness as well, right? So like economics, I would say that happiness is like a zero-sum game, right? So if one person on his own can generate 5 units of happiness and another person can generate 5 units of happiness, I think that these two people coming together could generate 50 units of happiness. The more people that work together, the more overall like happiness that you get. So if I agree with this, right? So I want to be happy and I want to maximize the amount of happiness for myself. I need to have other people around me that are capable of like feeding into my own happiness, right? I have to have like a group of people, family and friends, society, whatever you want to call it, that are capable of like satisfying the needs that I have, right? So this might be, we'll just put like house, clothes, friendship, subs. If I have my internal happiness that I'm trying to have satisfied through other people, through these things, right? I would assume that they have their own internal happiness as well. So we kind of have to like enter this like exchange where like I'm offering things, they're offering things, and then together we all kind of work to build upon this type of like happiness through every person. This is like roughly my moral view of like how the world works. I think that everybody's trying to satisfy things that make them happy individually, and I think that we do that by satisfying each other's like desires and wants, so that we all like kind of like work off of each other's happiness, make each other's happiness. Is there an argument against this idea? I think this is the best way to view things. I think that if you go through this model, I think it gives you a good understanding of how other people work. I think it gives you a good approach to other relationships. I think it gives you a good approach to how the world works. If we take this little mini model here to be true, from this position, we get into this kind of world where we have, I guess you could call this a form of like social contract. So basically, what this is I agree to respect some rights that you have, and you agree to respect some rights that I have, and then by way of doing that, we all kind of like ensure this like better world for all of us. However, it should be noted, okay? The only reason, or no, okay. That's like on an individual, personal level, right? Okay. So, all right. I would say that all of this up here, okay, roughly, all right, in the philosophy browser materials, I would say like roughly up here, I would call this like meta ethics, kind of, okay? Basically, I'm trying to figure out like, well, what do I consider good? Technically, it's a little bit deeper than that, but whatever, right? So this is like.
I don't know if he's referring to social contract theory at all, but I don't like social contract theory. Me personally. Well, I think it's wrong. I think it's objectively wrong.
Good. Okay, this is the goodness. The goodness is other people make you happy, you make other people happy. Okay, boom. All right. Now, if I want to think.
The only problem is, where does it come from? And if it's your happiness, that's goodness, I think that it follows necessarily that sometimes other people's happiness contributes to your happiness, but I don't think that it follows all the time. So I think that he's close to something that I think Ayn Rand already figured out, but he's not really pinpointing the kinds of things that she pinpointed.
Figure out, like, how do I apply this consistently throughout our society? How do I create a society where everybody thinks this and we all work together and everybody's happy, blah, 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 blah. We're going to call this little bullshit. It was basically, this is going to be something called rural utilitarianism, okay, which is like a little branch of consequentialism. So this is a fancy way of saying what I would want to do is I want to craft a set of rules for society, okay, that I believe maximizes the happiness of every single individual. The rule here might be something like, I don't think anybody
See, I need to really study philosophy, but I think utilitarianism is where there's where we try to maximize the majority, as many people as we can, happiness, regardless of whether that involves sacrificing or taking from a minority of people. Yeah, it's right or useful if it's for the benefit of the majority. It's right if it's useful or it's for the benefit of the majority. The greatest number, greatest happiness of the greatest number. That is not true. If you think that way, then it allows for things like socialized healthcare, which are immoral because it involves stealing. So it's not going to be obvious, but who's someone who's for he's for some statism, to my knowledge. Even though he calls himself a capitalist, he's for some statism, which makes him not really a capitalist. And that makes him and the only way to achieve these things is through taking. He's not for voluntary taxes or things like that. He's not for that.
Should steal from anybody else without provocation. Because if we have a society, for instance, where people are stealing, right, you're literally detracting from another person's happiness for your own selfish gain. And if everybody started to engage in that behavior, it would be a race to the bottom where everything would be fucked, right? So like a good rule for society would be no stealing, right? I think that's without provocation, right? So you can make arguments for things like taxes or whatever later on. But yeah, how do you come up with the rule?
He is contradicting himself. He said no stealing, except in that case, in that case, in that case. You can make arguments for taxes, he says, in this case, in this case, in that case. He literally said at the beginning of the video that this was what he would like to avoid. He's not aware of himself right now. I don't know what's going through his head. And I admire Destiny for the things, the channel that he's built. But he's wrong on a lot of things.
Do you self-reflect, or does it come from yourself? So like a rule would just be anything that like I think would maximize like my personal happiness. So I'm being a little bit vague or vacuous with the term personal happiness there, because what I'm assuming is the assumption that I am, without provocation means nothing if you don't define that term. So when I say like provocation, what I mean is like, is there a justification for doing an action that increases the net happiness in society? Is there a justification for performing a certain action that makes everybody better off if everybody like adheres to said action? So for instance, a form of theft that I think would be morally justifiable would be a thing like taxes, okay? So how are taxes justifiable? Because if I steal a little bit from the wealthiest people, the amount that they lose, the impact on their life is going to be very little, but the net gain in happiness between everybody else in society is going to be very high. And also, when everybody else in society is super well off, your net gain in happiness is going to be higher off as well, right? Take, for example, a business owner in a city. If he's taxed and other people are taxed a little bit higher, everybody else in the city makes more money. That means that that business owner has more people to sell products to. Less of his tax money is being wasted on like crime enforcement, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So that would...
See, we do not agree. He does believe in utilitarianism. He didn't define it before, but that's what he believes in. While I think that what's good is what's good for you. So you should act to contribute to your own happiness. I don't believe that we can sacrifice minorities or majorities for either or.
Be a form of like justified thievery. How do you balance between social well-being and rights? I mean, I would argue that rights that exist, I think, would be an extension of things that contribute to your personal happiness. So for instance, I have a right, generally, I have a right to bodily autonomy. The reason being, I don't know if I could be happy in a society where other people have a right to use my body against my consent. Generally, I would say that like the function that rights serve is rights are kind of like a shield to protect you from other people fucking with you, right? Rights are something that basically serve to make it so other people can't come in and fuck with your internal happiness, basically. So we have rules in society, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so I want to talk about like tit for tat systems. No, I don't think so. If you engage with somebody, or if you encounter somebody, okay, I think that all of a successful society is built on this type of exchange. If you find people that are not willing to engage with this type of exchange, then in my opinion, this is going to sound like extreme, but in my opinion, all bets are off. As soon as somebody has proven that they're willing to drop this level of consideration, then I think it's fair to drop your level of consideration for that person as well. This is why I think that there are some people whose views are fundamentally incompatible with what I would consider a well-functioning society. For instance, a group of people that view themselves as racially superior to another people think that it's okay to take certain groups of people and excise them from society. those groups of people won't be able to live in harmony with the other groups of people because they're trying to be eradicated, and it's going to cause like a lot of disharmony between these groups of people, right? So like highly intolerant groups of people, or people that aren't willing to share this social contract with broad groups of people without valid justification. So for instance, if those other people are aggressed in the first or whatever, would be people that are considered like unable to reciprocate, like, or be a part of like these types of societies. So this is like a general rule, okay? General rule is that I need some reciprocated value here for me to want to reciprocate value with you. Reciprocated values, right? We'll just say that.
Guys, this is not revolutionary stuff. He's spouting the same nonsense that everybody on the planet spouts, that every religion has spouted. I wonder if he's read Ayn Rand's books. Not just the novels, but the novels too. I wonder if he's read any of them. I wonder if he's read Aristotle.
None of these terms actually mean anything. You can say whatever the fuck you want. Okay. So if we have all of this set up, okay, one of the things that's guaranteed, okay, so we're getting, so now, okay, so we've moved through the meta level, this is the normative level, now we're getting down to an applied level, okay? If somebody were to talk to me about, like, let's say that I have, boom, I have my house, okay? Me feeling like I have a house, and me feeling like the security of that house is guaranteed to me by society, these are very, very, very important things to me. Okay, I don't want to live in a society where it feels like anybody can take my shit or destroy my shit. I would consider that society dysfunctional, right? Because if we come back up here, like, what does it mean for me to be happy? Well, for me to be happy, I need to have certain things that are guaranteed to me. People aren't going to steal shit from me. People aren't going to fucking kill me. People aren't going to rape me. People aren't going to take my, like, these are things that, like, are important to me to maintain my happiness. This is like an agreement that I have with everybody else that lives, like, in my society, right? So if I'm in a society and somebody approaches me, okay, and this person is saying, hey, I'm going to destroy your shit, okay, in my view of morality, this person is not reciprocating to me a system that says that they're going to be respectful of the things that make me happy. As soon as a person has aggressed on me or aggressed on another person in that manner, where they're attacking this person's like internal happiness, where they're going against what this person like wants to get out of society, in a way that's like a direct attack on their shit, I think that this person has a right to do whatever they need to stop this person from carrying out that aggression. Yeah. So this is basically where, in a highly abbreviated manner, this is where like I build my model for self-defense. So if you're going to attack my shit, you're going to come at me, okay? And then we can add a few more rules to make this more generally favorable for sex. So for instance, like I should have some obligation to put this person on notice, maybe in their internal happiness model, maybe property isn't that important to them. So they actually don't see this attack on me as that egregious. They wouldn't think that like, oh wow, I didn't know that was part of your contract, right? So there should be some obligation to put this person on notice, like, hey, if you attack my house, I'm going to fucking kill you, right? I think that you have that obligation to do that before taking action, although I think in society most people should reasonably understand that. And then there are other things that could augment this as well. So for instance, if this person is 4 years old, they probably don't have the cognizant, like, know-it-all, like, or wherewithal to know that they're breaking this contract. We wouldn't expect somebody that's 4 years old to be able to make that decision. If a person is, like, out of their mind on drugs or whatever, then arguably, if we consider them compromised, maybe killing them would be unethical. I don't know. I'd have to think more about that one, because they're still threatening to destroy your stuff, and they're still engaging in an act that's leading to an action of threatening your mental happiness. But, yeah. It's kind of abbreviated, but I think that like this is basically where my argument for self-defense comes from. Another person is not reciprocating with you the contract that we all agree to live by in society, and has shown a disregard for things that make you happy. Therefore, I don't believe in any sort of objective morality. I don't think you have an obligation to protect this person against their own harmful wishes. Their harmful wishes being to destroy your property and then endure any harm that might result from you defending your property. Okay. There it is. Destiny, would you agree that killing a 4-year-old would be justified to save your livelihood if there was no other way, right? It's possible. So the way that I would explain this is that if a 4-year-old was in a position to, so this is a little bit complicated, right? So I don't consider 4-year-olds to be moral agents, meaning I don't know if they could do something that I would truly consider to be right or wrong. Since they're not moral agents of their own, I would consider a 4-year-old, that is a human being, to be an extension of their parent, a form of property, basically. So if a 4-year-old is out causing significant harm to you, and you have to kill that 4-year-old, I can't even imagine how this could be the case, but if that was the case, then the responsible party for that would be the parent of that 4-year-old, for letting them get into a place where they can actually cause that harm. So for instance, actually, we can spin up an example of this. This is a good question. So we spin up an example of this. What if I'm driving down the street, and then a 4-year-old child starts crawling in front of the street, right? Out of nowhere. A fucking ninja 4-year-old starts crawling, or not crawling, I guess, first. They start running out in the middle of the street, okay? Let's say that I can either swerve, and I swerve off the road, off a canyon, because I'm driving in Maui and High. I'll swerve off the road, and then I die. Or I have to run over the 4-year-old, right? Well, in that case, well, fuck it, I'm not going to suicide myself. You run over the 4-year-old, okay? You make the decision to kill the 4-year-old to save yourself from great personal harm. Maybe you and your whole family are riding around, right? If that's the case, I think that you're morally justified in killing the 4-year-old, but the responsibility for the death of the 4-year-old lies on the parent of the 4-year-old. The parent was the responsible party of the 4-year-old. The 4-year-old can't make the decision to put your stuff at risk. The parent knows that the 4-year-old is capable of doing that, and by allowing the 4-year-old to roam, you know the risks of that happening in a given area, so you bear the responsibility of any action taken by that 4-year-old. So that would be like the chain of responsibility there, basically.
I don't think that this is going to get any more interesting to me, so I might stop it early. I'm going to skip around because what I found really interesting was the basics. Or how he arrived at what is morality to him.
Can you apply that logic to defending someone else?
If we search is ought Ayn Rand it is the ultimate goal and end in itself that makes existence of values possible. Metaphysically, life is the only phenomenon that is an end in itself, a value gained and kept by a constant process of action. Epistemologically, the concept of value is genetically dependent upon and derived from the values come from living. So it's for the living. To speak of value as apart from life is worse than a contradiction in terms. It is only the concept of life that makes the concept of value possible. This is where morality should come from. Those who choose life. It's for those who choose life. In answer to those philosophers who claim that no relation can be established between ultimate ends and values, or values, and the facts of reality, let me stress that the fact that living entities exist and function necessitates the existence of values, and an ultimate value which for any given living entity is its own life. That means that the fact that I'm alive makes it so it follows like what's the word? I can't think of the word, but it follows that as long as I'm choosing life as an ultimate value, because I think that if you're choosing death, then you contradicted yourself. So you have to choose life. And it necessitates that you have to value food, water, this, that, or the other thing in order to survive. If you didn't value those things, then you would die. Thus, the validation and value judgments is to be achieved by reference to the facts of reality. The fact that a living entity determines what it ought do. So much for the issue of the relation between is and ought. That's from The Virtue of Selfishness. I don't know what page. It might be 17, but I don't know what that 17 means. I haven't finished reading The Virtue of Selfishness, but I already understand this to be true. He arrives at his utilitarianism from nowhere. From nowhere. It comes from nowhere, yet he's decided that it's true, and he's contradicted himself by saying that in this case, in that case, in this case, you can steal. What's the point of the no stealing rule?